This is a Sydney gardener. Dachshund.
Stihl, manufacturer of cordless garden tools, proudly sponsors the Skinny Jean Gardener.
Ho, ho, ho! Welcome to the Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. As if you need any more I said this last week, didn't I? As if you need any more singing. But, you know, I'd be lost without it, wouldn't I? That's my main talent, guys, right? Anyone? Hit the intro. Welcome to the Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. Talking about gardening, talking about people, and talking about what you should do. Talking about life, talking about soil, and having a laugh too. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener, it's the Skinny Jean Gardener. Hello, how are we all doing? Welcome everyone to the Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. Big fist bump, big fist bump for listening to this podcast. The number one, say it enough times and people will believe it. The number one podcast, the number one gardening podcast. Get the title right first, that will help, won't it? The number one gardening podcast in the world. Go big or go home, peeps. Go big or go home. Let's go straight into it this week. We've got the awesome Mr. Adam Frost. I talk to Adam in this interview about how we meet, but we did meet at like what was it called? Like a little bit of we were on stage and we were talking about how to get young people into. It was a discussion on. There's a word for it. Can't think what the word's called. But we were up there anyway, talking about gardening, getting young people into gardening. That's when I first met Adam. I think in the podcast I said something like, I've just edited this interview, but something like, oh, I didn't know who you are. And when I said I don't know who you are, or didn't know who you were, I wasn't being rude, but I'm quite naive to people, and I say this in the podcast too, quite naive to people in the garden industry. But now I get to see Adam, all these shows and stuff. It's awesome to see him. It's awesome. What, should we say friend? Let's say gardening friend. But he's always been really kind to me and my brother when he was part of Skinny Jean Gardeners. He's a very nice guy, and it was an absolute privilege. Like I say, all the people that I get on this podcast, it's absolute privilege to have them on because they're all gardening friends. And they're all really supportive of everything I do. I hope I'm really supportive of what they do as well. And it's really nice to get them on. Really nice. And it's really good to have Adam on the podcast. And he's one of the nice guys. He's one of the nice guys. Makes no sense. He's one of the nice guys. Guys. Let's get into. I'll be honest with you, right? This is a pre-record, and I've done about 3 podcasts. So expect some rambling. But if you've just joined us, this is your first podcast you've listened to, the Skinny Jean Gardener, welcome. Welcome to the podcast, guys. Welcome to the podcast. let's hit it. It's the Garden Chit Chat, the Garden Chit Chat. It's the Garden Chit Chat, the Garden Chit Chat. It's a Garden Chit Chat, it's a Garden Chit Chat. Chat, the Garden Chit Chat. Well, yeah, so finally I'll get you on the podcast.
I'm here, mate.
And so basically, when I met you, which was two years ago.
Do you know what? Time flies. It might even be 3.
3 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh man.
You've aged.
Oh, I really have though. I really have. I used to be a young gardener, and now I'm like.
Yeah, now you look about the same as me.
Yeah, it's scary, isn't it? When I met you, before that, so I'll be honest with you. When we first met you, me and Dale were like, "Who's this geezer? He's a nice guy, but who is he? He's real friendly."
little did we know who we were going to be talking to in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, true. We were doing a thing, weren't we, about, was it gardening for youngsters or gardening for something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was about getting young people into gardening, and then
Yeah.
it was alright, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was all right. Yeah, yeah. It was a funny conversation, if I remember rightly.
But we were, and I still am, like, naive from people from the industry, because obviously you're not just someone that's on Gardeners World. You've been around for a while.
I was a kid, wasn't I, that started on a parks department, so 16 years old, and just worked hard, I suppose, and then trained as a landscaper. And eventually, the person you will know is obviously Jeff Hamilton. So then I eventually got a job with him, and that changed everything. Then I trained in design and went to Chelsea and won a few of them medal things.
Yeah, how many gardens have you done in Chelsea?
Too many, mate. Too many. Yeah. I've promised Mrs. Frost I ain't doing anymore. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. But
hard work.
They're brilliant. It's addictive. It's like any show.
Yeah.
It's slightly addictive, but they're brilliant. I mean, to be fair, if you're a designer in this country and you want to get on and you're not, in a sense, from a certain walk of life, then winning gold medals at the Chelsea Flower Show is a good way to build a brand, really.
Yeah. So is that your main thing you enjoy doing?
The problem I've got at the moment is I enjoy it all. I love teaching, I love designing, but I'm quite starting to enjoy this television stuff as well, which I wasn't quite sure to start with, but but the more of it you do, enjoy it.
That's getting addictive now.
Yeah, I would say addictive, but I enjoy the days.
Yeah.
You know, I enjoy the cameramen and the soundmen and just the producers and just, you know, talking about. Let's be honest, I'm now getting paid just to talk about gardens. Well,
It's pretty.
it's all right, isn't it?
Are you getting smooth hands now?
No, not they're still a bit, mate. They're still, you know, my nails are still knackered and whatever, but but it's good.
When we were talking about getting young people to garden, is that like quite a big thing for you?
Yeah, my thing is also I do this ambassador stuff for the RHS. That's probably why I was on that thing actually.
Yeah.
And for me, I think, guys, you know, like people like you, you're sort of, I think you're absolutely nailing. And the RHS is good at it as well. Is that primary school coming through primary school? For me, the bit is when you take that step to the secondary school, and all of a sudden, you know, most of the people want to take the out of you because you've got an interest in gardening. And is how we deal with that secondary school bit, and also how we make it cool as a career.
Because gardening, I was never into gardening when I was younger. I was never introduced to it. But a lot of people that were into gardening always said that when they said they were going to be a gardener, it was like, what do you want to be a gardener for?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of negativity, isn't it? And it's not just, you know, what do you want to be a gardener for? That's a, you know, that's a wussy thing to do type thing, you know, or it's for old people, or you don't earn a lot of money, or, you know, that's for, you know, people with special needs. Which I've sat on education committees and I've heard teachers say, well, yeah, but that's more a subject for, you know, people that are not that academic.
Yeah. That's weird, isn't it?
Well, on the basis that you and me get up every day and think, well, actually, what are we going to learn today?
Yeah.
And you have a lifetime of learning, don't you? So it's...
Everyone's constantly learning, aren't they?
Yeah. So that's the bit I don't get. So I don't know whether it's a, social thing, just the way that society views... But then you turn up at the Chelsea Flower Show as a designer and you treat it like a rock and roll star. So it just doesn't all add up, really.
Industry and people outside it, because I feel like now I'm in that sort of industry, I enjoy it and I get it more. But I know my friends still, I mean, they only know gardening through me.
Yeah.
Or they know gardening because now they've got a house and they've decided to start doing a bit of gardening.
Yeah.
But they're not really, like, I don't think any of my friends watch garden as well.
No.
They don't feel...
No, you don't feel it's necessarily relevant for them either,
No.
is it? This whole thing about, you know, Gardener's World and attracting young people and all that, I think in reality there's not enough gardening shows to attract the breadth of people that you're trying to speak to. You know, if you want to do something for youngsters, they're not going to be sat there on a Friday night watching that, being realistic, as much as, you know, I think that audience is looking at, you know, people of a certain age, but also it's looking at people that are taking on their first home, maybe they've got their family, and that life's changing for them. I think if you're going to try and get to youngsters, it's a completely different way of doing it, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, because I always say because people say, oh, once people leave school, they're not going to be interested in gardening. I think partly that's true. I think if you do the education when they're younger, some people will go into secondary school and want to become gardeners and leave school and become gardeners, get into industry, and some people won't. But when they come and get their own home and have their own garden, I think that's the point where all that education that happens before all comes back.
It comes back to them, which is the old grandparents bit, mate. In a sense that my grandparents chucked veggies into me, and then propagation and all that. I had two different sets of grandparents, and I think even if I hadn't have done it as a career, at some point that would have come back into my life, because I think we then at times we semi-yearn back to those early days, don't we? So I think you're right, that bit of education becomes an important part of your life at some point again, doesn't it? It revisits in a sense.
Because you did, were you doing stuff when I first met you with home base, or was it the home base you were doing?
I did a home base academy, so I set up, which was born out of me moaning really about not enough people coming to an industry. But then we say that, we talk about young people, by the time we finished that, we were taking 80 on each year, and we advertised the jobs, and within 2 weeks we had 1,600 people apply.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot of young people, isn't it? So that's what I'm saying.
There
It
is
doesn't.
a demand.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't stack up. And I wonder sometimes whether we just don't. We don't even sell it well ourselves. We more or less apologise. Do you know what I mean? We say, "Oh yeah, I know, but you don't earn much money, and instead of going, do you know what? You'll come into this industry, all right. You won't get paid a lot of money because nobody does when they first start off in anything. No. But I tell you what, you are going to not stop learning for the rest of your life. Yeah. You might end up in the sciences. You might end up in the arts. You might end up, on a television. You might end up. It's massive.
Yeah, there's so much to go into.
Yeah. So if we sold it on that basis and went bang, we're here. We'd have more chance, wouldn't we?
Yeah, well, definitely. I think it'd be more attractive.
Yeah.
Well, not more attractive, just more accessible for people to think, oh, I could do this, I could do that.
And I think we're in a place as well now that maybe we should be the gardeners that cook rather than the chefs that garden. Do you know what I mean?
You're right.
You know what I mean? Because reality is that the generation of people that have been brought up with cooking programs, all the chefs talk about, wonderful ingredients and this, that, and the other. That's what we all do.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether we should flip it around.
Well, it's quite good because, especially cooking's gone massive, like with Jamie Oliver and stuff, and he makes it easier. And I only use him as an example because I've done bits with him before, but everyone's eating healthy now. And everyone wants to know where their food comes from. Yeah. So if we can get that into growing, so people know what they're going to end up. I always say it to kids: if you're going to start growing something, grow something you're going to cook with. Yeah,
you're gonna because it's same. My kids at home, I can engage all of them really easy in the veg garden.
Yeah.
And that's 21, 19, 13 and 11.
Yeah.
All go in the veg garden. Ornamental garden, they like nice flowers, but don't think they'll engage with it half as much as they will if they know that they can put it in their belly at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
But you talk about the Jamie thing. If you think about it, mate, when I left school, before telly really brought into cooking in a big way, it wasn't cool to be a chef.
No.
And now you had people like Jamie come on and bish bash bosh have a go, and it's all about your mates and it's a bit of fun, and then you've X years down the road you've got kids willing to leave school, work in boiling hot kitchens, have no social lives, not earn a lot of money when they first start, and that's the cooking,
The only easy thing cooking's got is that
it's instant.
It is instant, and then gardening's not. So it's like, how do you show it? Like I know with my daughter, she's 3 years old. She loves gardening, but we'll put a seed in, and she's like,
"What now?"
Well, I'm staring at it like, "Come on."
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, but then veg gardening is at least you can get it out of a season, can't you?
Yeah.
I think, but maybe that is a good thing with everything else being so. I don't know. Maybe everything else is so instant. Maybe it's not a bad thing having the odd thing that just...
With generation, especially the generation coming up now, we'll need to learn that things aren't so quick. Like you can order stuff from Amazon and instantly, and something will instantly come to you the next day.
But then things like vinyl have come back in. And I've got youngsters that are into vinyl. Well, is that a yearn back? Is it because they want something that is a bit more... or feels to them a bit more real? You get your hands on it, you get your hands on a sleeve cover and go, wow, the artwork's amazing, and it's a completely different experience to downloading something or just streaming something from somewhere else, isn't it?
Bill, yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
I don't know. It's interesting to see how it moves forward. But I mean, obviously, I think everybody's depending on you really to sort of fix it. Generally.
Cheers, mate.
The Garden Chit Chat. Right, I've composed myself since we last spoke. Thank you very much to Adam. He'll be back on later on in this podcast. Right, now it's time to learn some Latin with the awesome Mr. Ed Bird. Latin. Let's talk about the Latin.
Hello Lee, and hello again podcast listeners. Ed Bird here to have another look at botanical and horticultural Latin. This week I'm going to continue the theme of the habit of plants and have another look at a Latin word that is used to describe a plant habit. Although more accurately this week, the term that I'm going to look at is more the trait of a plant than the habit, but here goes. As in the previous few weeks, I think you'll be able to have a pretty good guess as to what the plant is. When I tell you both the genus and the species name of this plant, you should be able to picture it in your mind. It's a pretty common plant, grown a lot in gardens, and while this particular species is maybe not the most common, the genus is a very common plant. The descriptive term that I'm looking at this week is dentata. Dentata, as I'm sure you can guess, is related to all things toothed, and I'm sure that you can think of a few plants which have a toothed appearance. It usually relates to the leaves and often the margin or the edge of the leaf, which has a serrated or toothed appearance. It can also relate to variegation on the leaves, with a green centre and a white edge, particularly on an ivy species called Hedera dentata, which has a green centre and white all around the edge. The classic example of a plant with this species name, the species name dentata, has a genus name Lavandula, or commonly known as lavender. If you have a look at the leaves of Lavandula dentata, you will see that they're toothed and almost look like a child would draw teeth on a person if they were drawing a picture of a person's face. The common name for this plant is French lavender or fringe lavender, and it's a species of lavender that isn't hardy. It means it won't survive winter in the UK outdoors. It doesn't like the cold, so it will usually be killed by UK winters. Now, one thing that I'm trying to do by speaking to you about Latin every week is try and clear up some of the terms of horticulture that can be a bit confusing, and there are loads of these. You get perennials, you get annuals, you get hardy, half-hardy, tender plants. So this week I've done a little bit of research for you into three of the terms which are often used in gardening, but especially for beginner gardeners can be a little bit confusing. Three terms are hardy, half-hardy and tender. And once you get your head around it, it is quite simple to understand these words. Hardy means able to survive outside during winter. Don't need to do anything to the plant, just leave it, forget about it until spring, until all the snow's melted, and that plant will survive. You get half-hardy plants, which are able to survive outdoors, but they do need some protection. This could be a cloche over the plant, or some other protection. You could throw a straw over the plant, or something like that, just to give it protection against those really cold winters. And then you get tender plants. These are plants which will not survive outdoors during winter. So you can use these plants year after year. They must be brought indoors to survive, or they could be sacrificed and replaced each year. That's all for this week, but I look forward to speaking to you again next week. I've been Ed Bird. Thanks for listening.
Latin. Let's talk about the Latin. Thank you very much to Ed once again. Awesome. Little bit of Latin lesson right there for us. Who would have thought a podcast which did start off absolutely laying into the Latin language of gardening would then have it as a weekly feature every week with Mr. Ed Bird, and would be learning as we went along. Who would have thought it, guys? Who would have thought it? And we said in this interview today with Adam Frost that we're always learning. And that's what the industry is all about. We're always learning new things, which perfectly puts me on to this week's 1 minute task. This week's 1 minute task is really quick and really simple and really easy. Because if you're growing, and it's about cucumbers, if you're growing cucumbers and you want to try and save a bit of space, you can grow cucumbers up a cane. Tie them to a cane and grow them upwards. Because cucumbers, as we know, or if you may not know, maybe you just started growing cucumbers, they can spread out pretty far. Cucumbers can go quite far. If you ain't got a lot of space, then the best way is to grow them upwards rather than along the ground. You can grow them along the ground if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to save a bit of space, like me, then grow them up a cane. Tie the plant to the cane. Make sure it's right in the soil. Tie it to the cane. Then you can grow those cucumbers up that cane. Really easy, really simple, saving you a lot of space. So this week, the tasks have turned into quite specific things. So if you're not growing cucumbers, then it'll be over in a second. But if you are, then start growing on canes. That's this week's 1 minute task. I'm going to try and make them really quick, really snappy, really easy for you guys to be able to pop out there. Maybe you're doing it right now. Maybe you're gardening right now while listening to this podcast and looking at your cucumbers and thinking, crikey, they're taking up a lot of space. Boom. Cane. I have to go out and buy a cane, obviously, but boom. 1 minute task. Half hour to the shops and back. But 1 minute task. Right, let's get back into this week's interview with Adam. I really enjoy, actually, we're on quite a nice little run at the moment, about a year run at the moment. But this year, actually, that sounds bad to the guys from last year because they've all been really good. I really do enjoy them. But sometimes the chat flows easier. And actually, I'll tell you what it is, right? Because the more I've got into it, the more I've got into this podcasting world, the chat, I know what it's all about now. I know how this podcast works. We just sit there and the chat flows. And sometimes it flows quite easily. Sometimes it doesn't. But with Adam, it was perfect. The perfect amount of gardening bants, chit-chat, and generally nice guy vibes. Looking for a word there. I couldn't find it, could I? So let's find out what more we talked about in part 2 of the Adam Frost interview. It's the garden chit-chat, the garden chit-chat.
Your new pad,
Yeah.
which I only say your new pad as if I've been over, but
Yeah, well,
basically everyone has been over it now.
Well, they have been busy, haven't they? Yeah, they have been busy with a load of cameras. It's unbelievable. Yeah, we've set the school up at home. We run the business there. That's why we've taken it on, really.
It's a good area too.
It's beautiful. Yeah, and the place is beautiful, but the garden is a massive challenge. And I suppose if you'd have said to me when I first went into gardening what was my dream, it was to have a big garden of my own, rather than spending most of my life creating gardens for other people. It's a massive gamble. I'm not sure we can really afford to do it, but Mrs. Frost seems to be convinced we'll be fine.
Right, actually, if you've got her support, mate, you'll be fine.
Yeah. So, and I love it, and I don't know. I think I'm happier, probably at my happiest, if I'm just out there doing, playing with plants or in a veg garden or.
That area you've got your allotment bit in. When I first saw that, I was like, "What the hell is he going to do with this?"
Yeah.
And it's proper. Changed.
Yeah, it's probably changed. It has changed. Yeah, yeah. I enjoy it, don't I? So I suppose, in a sense, I'm not just in a sense doing it for a job.
No, yeah. As a end goal.
Yeah, that's the bit I suppose that's turned out to be lucky. If you say I've been lucky, is that I've ended up in a job that I'd be doing even if I wasn't getting paid.
Yeah. It's like having your hobby as a job, isn't it?
Which is pretty cool, isn't it?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, in that sense. Yeah, which is what I said to my kids, just go and do something you love and then convince someone to pay you to do it.
Yeah, that's what it's about, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But what are you up to anyway? Let's get an update on you, because this ain't all about other people. People want to know about what you're up to as well.
I don't want to. They have enough of mine. Have you listened to my podcast?
Yeah, I have, mate. Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. Because what's his name? Don't worry.
Oh, right, okay.
I get messages about him, don't I?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A lot of singing at the moment, mate.
A lot of singing
on the podcast. No, I don't know. Do you know? At the moment, I'm at one of them points where. So this is my first year. I've gone all in, and I enjoy doing the podcast.
Yeah.
And I just want to get the message out there and do more. I want to do more with schools and kids that come to shows and festivals and get them involved.
Yeah.
So I've been to festivals and shows before, and kids always it's sometimes the parents that stop them from doing it.
Yeah, I agree
and
with
just
that.
getting involved, and I think that's a shame. It's just making it fun as well.
Yeah, and then, you say about the parents stopping them doing it. I think there's parents out there stop their kids doing it for a living.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I hope my mum and dad don't listen to this, but my mum and dad don't like what I do now. I was an electrician before, and it's like safe and proper job in inverted commas. And maybe that's a generation thing. I don't know what that is, but yeah, I think sometimes parents. It's the whole getting money thing. I think is the thing, especially with little kids.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because I go into schools, and I'll go into secondary schools, like an inner city secondary school, and you're right, because I'll go. They want to know how I got to where I've got to, and I'll tell them the story from the naughty kid from Arlo, that and I'll tell them the story of going to Devon, being a disaster, ended up on the Parks Department, all that sort of stuff, and they'll always want to know how much money do you earn and what sort of car do you drive.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a lot of that, but I don't know. Is that any different from when we all grew up? Did we all not want to be in a slightly better place than where we were?
Yeah, I think so. Probably. I mean, I've changed my opinion on that sort of thing. You're better to do a job that you enjoy for the money, because you'll get more out of it life-wise.
Yeah, but we're also in a place where you love what you do and I love what I do. So we're talking from a slightly different place in a way, aren't we?
Yeah, you're right.
It's interesting, isn't it, to see where. I watch my kids. It's not. I'd say I've got 4 of them, and just watching them grow up, and I ain't sure I'd want to be where they all are at the minute, if I'm honest, and have to deal with what they have to deal with. My life's quite, even though my life's mental, my life's quite simple in a lot of ways, and I'm not. My missus say, you ain't complicated, but all you want is either a decent pint, a decent bottle of wine, something nice to eat,
but it does
and
take
your family
time
around
to get
you.
to that point, though.
Yeah, it does take time. It does, and I suppose I've grafted to get there, but my social life's been built around my sports life, but it was always people, whereas I look at my youngsters now, and after communications going on with their hand, or a little thing in front of their hand, and when they're coming home from school, and I don't know, the communications are still going on, and not always with people that they even like. And anyway, I thought we ain't talk about gardening now, are we? We've gone completely somewhere different.
But it is a little bit, because technology does change things, and it does stop kids from getting outside, because it's the whole getting messy thing.
Yeah.
And parents are like, well, you can either go outside and get your clothes messy and get messy, and you got to have a bath or wash your clothes, or you can sit and on the iPad and just safe there. And I've heard that before, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything better than getting outside and getting absolutely caked in mud. And
I always say there's a massive adventure outside your back door, like waiting to happen. There's so much you can do.
No, you're right, because I always end up saying, why is it with television we'll happily travel halfway around the world to pick a rock up to see what's going on underneath it. Yet a lot of that, I know on a slightly smaller scale, probably in a lot of ways, a lot of that's going on outside your back door.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's crackers, isn't it? I don't know how. But yeah, slightly mad, really. But
so what are we going to see you up to for next year, mate?
Wow, say they are coming back, Gardeners World coming back and filming at home, so that you'll see a bit more of an update on what I'm up to doing.
That's good, because people are always roaring on, we want more Adam.
I get, mate. Do you know what I get? I get you. My 2 main questions in life now, when we're going to see your garden again, and when you're taking over from Monty. That's the 2 stock questions.
You got a dog yet?
I've had a dog for ages, mate. I've had a dog for ages.
You're ready to go then?
I've had dogs for ages. So home coming back a bit. I'm out on the road doing a lot of shows, doing all the shows. Design practice has been. School's really good. School's been really good.
You know what?
Maybe we should do something like that, mate, for youngsters at some point, instead of, because people keep asking me about the garden.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do something that does something for a group of young people, and we do a day in my garden, but we do it around a group of young people.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That would be a cool thing to do, wouldn't it? Because all right, everyone wants to come, but actually I can't open it up to everybody.
No.
So maybe we could do something to run, I don't know, even run some sort of competition or something like that, and we just have a... Because we could get, between us, you and me could get, 4 or 5 different people there, and maybe we could all do different things in the garden or just open the garden up and talk.
I mean, and now it's on record as well. I mean,
Yeah,
I've
I
got
know.
to come to your house. So.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, well, I think it does. I think maybe we should do that because I think that's a nice way of opening it up as well. And the work that obviously I do with, secondary school stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good way of doing it.
I think and also that would be good because I always talk about kids, and when I was younger, the best place I went to, even as a school, was a tour of McDonald's.
Yeah.
And that's all I've got. And then you got these kids coming to shows and stuff, and things like that, which will get them interested, and they'll go away, tell their friends about it, and then they'll tell their friends.
Yeah. So maybe we should do that.
Yeah, that sounds like an interest.
Right, we'll do that. When we all calm down a bit, we'll do
Work
it.
on it.
Yeah, we'll work on it. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
It's a pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure. Well, thank you for asking me.
No, anytime.
I was wondering when you were going to ask me. I mean, it's like, about 12, 18 months in, I thought you'd ask me eventually. I thought we were mates, but there you go, son.
You're a hard man to catch up with.
No, cheers, boy.
Thanks, mate.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
It's the garden chit chat, the garden chit chat. It's a garden chit chat, it's a garden chit chat. Chat, 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 chat. The garden chit chat. Big thank you to Adam for being on the podcast. Do you know what, actually? I said to Adam, if you could come on the podcast, I said, yeah, sure, mate, come and find me. And I went to go and find him at a certain time. He wasn't there. I thought, man, well, he's a busy guy. I get it. These guys are busy. He's got a little podcast, He ain't got time for a podcast. He's got around the baby seat, you know what I'm saying? I was like, all right, do you know what? He's a nice guy. I'll let him off. He must be busy if he's not going to meet me. Then, about 20 minutes later, I was walking to go and get a cup of tea. Bit downhearted because I thought it'd be cool to have Adam on the podcast. And he caught me. He goes, all right, boy. This is a rubbish impression, by the way. All right, boy. Where you going? So I'm just going to get a cup of tea. We're going to do that podcast. Come back for me, didn't he? What a legend. Come back for me. So, yeah. Thank you very much. If you listen to this, Adam, thank you very much for being on the podcast. And yeah, as we said at the end, we might be doing some bits together, try and get kids involved. That's what it's all about, guys. Getting young people involved in gardening. We might be doing some bits in the future. Let's see how that goes. I look forward to seeing how that pans out. But whatever happens, he's been on the podcast. So thank you very much for that. Right, that is it. What we ain't done question. Question of I don't need to sing a tune, do I? We've already got a tune for it. Here we go. Have you got a question for me? This week's question is a question that I get asked pretty much on a weekly basis, all right? And I'm just going to give one idea because if you follow me on Instagram, if you don't, you should follow me on Instagram. I've just started Instagram TV. Now, Instagram TV is quite a new thing. I spoke to my mates the other day down the old pub. I said, guys, you watch Instagram TV? Not one person knew what Instagram TV was. It's quite a new platform. But basically, it's like YouTube, but on Instagram. So I'm bringing out new Instagram TV videos every Sunday with a little bit of advice. We've had, in the last couple of weeks, advice about growing your grass when it's yellow. I had to come back with another video about using compostable cups because I accidentally put on social media that I wasn't using them. Don't matter, guys. Redeem myself. And this week, I'm doing one. I can't remember what I'm doing one this week. But anyway, there's loads of different advice on Instagram TV. So hit up my Instagram. But this week's question, and that's what I was going to say, I'm going to put more ideas up about this week's question. Lee, what's the question? This week's question is, how do I get rid of slugs? Now, I get this question pretty much every single week on the Twitter, when I go to shows. That's the only question anyone's got. Anyone got a question? Hands go up. Yep. How do you get rid of slugs? Everyone else's hands go down. It's the same question. In fact, now part of my old talk, I got a whole slug section just to stop those sort of questions. So let me give you one idea to get rid of slugs, guys. It's a pretty simple one. All you have to do is get a brick, right? But now, don't jump to conclusions, all right? Don't jump to any conclusions before you think, that's no need for that, Lee. There's no need for that. Get a brick, pop it up against the fence on a bit of an angle. Just prop it up and leave it there, all right? Just leave it sitting there. I think I've talked about this before on the podcast way back. Leave it sitting there. Then, over time, it'll get damp, dark. All the slugs will congregate under there. In the evening, just pop out there, lift out the brick, and get the slugs, chuck them over your neighbour's garden, alright? Don't do that. That bit was a joke, alright? Don't chuck them over neighbour's garden. But move them away from the allotment. I've always got a brick sitting down near my allotment, damp, cold, exactly where they want to be. And I always just move them up. Move them away. Because I don't agree with this. There's a lot of talk about slugs and stuff and how to get rid of them. I especially don't agree with doing the salt thing. Someone said salt the other day. There's no need for that, guys. There's no need for it. Just move them elsewhere. Move them away from your allotment where they're eating the stuff. So that's this week's tip. Look, I will put another Instagram TV video up about just slugs for you. Give you a few ideas. But this week's question, it's done. Oh, I stumbled there, didn't I? I'm going to leave it in. That's this week's question, everyone. If you've got a question, hit me up on the Twitter or at lee@skinnyjeangardener.co.uk. That's this week's questions. Have you got a question for me? And that is it for this week's gardening podcast with me, the Skinny Jean Gardener. Thank you very much for you guys for listening. Thank you very much to Adam Frost for being on the podcast. Thank you very much to Ed Bird, as always, for giving us his Latin expertise. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for entering the competition as well. Look, that's me done for this week. Thank you very much for listening, as always. I shall speak to you next week, where I'll probably be a bit panicked because I've got a festival to organise. Much love. I shall see you next week. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. It's a Skinny Jean Gardener. It's a Skinny Jean Gardener. It's a Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. It's a Skinny Jean Gardener. It's a Skinny Jean Gardener. It's a Skinny Jean Gardener podcast. Talking about gardening, talking about people, and talking about what you should do. Talking about life, talking about soil, and having a laugh too. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener. It's the Skinny Jean Gardener. It's the Skinny Jean.
Find out where you can buy Stihl cordless garden tools at stihlapproved.dealer.co.uk.
This is a Skinny Gardener.